Japanese swords are absolutely iconic and loved around the world. But did you know there was a large time period where they abandoned them in favour of Western-style sabres? Would you like to know more? Let's go. Hi, I'm Nick Thomas and welcome back to the Academy of Historical Fencing, and a fascinating look today at the Japanese Type 32 Gunto. Now what is that? Well, it is a Japanese designed and manufactured Western style sabre for the Japanese military. Personally, I think it's a fascinating weapon in a really interesting time period. Now they were called a Gunto because Gunto means military sword, and that means a mass manufactured machine-made sword for the military. And these swords were manufactured at the Tokyo Artillery Arsenal as opposed to traditional smiths, and are serial numbered, which means you can track the date they were manufactured. They were essentially a very industrial type production. Now there were a few different forms of this. There were ones that looked like Western sabres, there are ones that look like typical katana or tachi, and there are examples that sort of look like an in-between, that have the katana or tachi length grip and a European style guard on them. Now that two-handed type Gunto, that was really a senior officer's sword rather than the common issue that you see with this type sabre. Although I think it's a really fascinating bit of kit because ultimately, of course, it is very much still a katana, it's just adopted the guard off of a European sabre. And most people think they look quite fantastical and more fantasy, and in fact they were real. Now, as far as the different types of Gunto go, the one that looks like a katana or tachi, that didn't come into service until the 1930s, so during the era of this Western type sabre, this was the one in service. Although there is crossover between all of these swords, so you will see photos where you'll have examples of the sabre type Gunto and the double-handed Gunto and the more katana or tachi types, all combined in one photo. Well, how did we get here? Well, in the 1870s, Japan was going through a rapid change with industrialization and westernization. If you look at its military clothing, its weapons, its military doctrine and practice, warships, they were essentially taking influence from the major Western powers, which was France, Britain, Prussia, and as a result, they ended up with a lot of Western type equipment in an attempt to bring Japan into the modern age. And so part of that was the introduction of a military type sabre. Now this is the Type 32 1889 Gunto. There was an earlier version as well, but this is the absolutely iconic version. They were used for cavalry, so a general purpose cavalry sabre, and for non-commissioned officers, so sergeants. This is the non-commissioned officer or sergeant's type variant. They are identical sword designs, it's just the blade length. So this sergeant's example, which was called the Otsu, has the blade length just over 30 inches, and the Ko, which is the cavalry variant, is around 33 inches. Other than that, they are identical. So let's take a look at this sword and see what we're dealing with. So first of all, the scabbard. It is an all-steel scabbard of typical European style with a single suspension ring, which is a little bit cheap and doesn't allow it to hang all that well, but it kind of does the job. The scabbard, before we get rid of it, has one really cool feature, and that is it has a lock-in mechanism here. So you use the thumb to depress this latch and it allows the sword to release. And if you don't press it, the sword is locked firmly. So for retention purposes, that is absolutely fantastic. And we see this in mid-19th century British swords, for example, such as the police hanger. So what are we looking at here? Well, if I showed you just the blade and not the hilt, you'd probably say it's a Japanese sword, a katana. And the moment you see the hilt, you'd say, that's European, isn't it? And that's the point. The Japanese started to use European-style sabres. And initially, they were largely copies of French designs, such as this French officer's sabre. But soon after, they started evolving their own designs. And if you didn't know much about antique swords, you'd probably just assume this is a Western sword. And yet, to those that are familiar with European swords, will instantly see that it's not and is quite Japanese in its features. So overall, we have a blade that looks like a katana. It has a katana-like profile, a katana-like tip, but it has this typical European type guard. It has a nice knurled backstrap going its whole length like a lot of late 19th century swords. It has a leather loop here for the fingers, that's to do with retention. So a lot of swords have some kind of loop or sword knot added so that you can pass fingers or even the entire hand through for retention purposes so that you don't lose your sword. And this blade is named to Shinji Shimura, which is really quite unusual considering this is a sergeant's sword and not an officer's one. So these swords were not made in a traditional Japanese method. That means they're not made from tamagahani, they're not differential tempered, They are made in factories from modern steel with even tempering, so they're made exactly like a Western saber. Now, of course, so many of you are familiar with the katana and its use in feudal Japanese history and its use in World War II history. There's so many sort of famous images of the Japanese using swords in World War II and of them being captured in the Pacific Campaign as well. So what really happened? How did they go from katanas to sabers and then back to katanas again? So in the 1870s, yes, the Japanese were pushing towards this Western and industrialized approach, and so using modern type weaponry. But in the 1930s, something changed, and that is Japan started to look back into its history due to nationalism and national pride, trying to kind of hark back to the age, the romantic age of the samurai, and sort of instill that romantic ideal into their troops. And so they started manufacturing Japanese traditional type swords again and issuing them to soldiers as a symbol of their kind of Japanese cultural military heritage. Now, arguably, those swords that were made in World War II you could actually call small tachi rather than katana because of the hilt fittings and the way that it's carried. But either way, it is a traditional Japanese sword that came in to replace the Western-style military sabers. But that change didn't happen overnight. So in the mid-1930s, when they reintroduced the traditional Japanese swords, these were still in service. They couldn't manufacture the new swords quickly enough. World War II made it even worse. And so you'll see these swords in service right into the late 30s and into the early 40s. And as a result, this sword became known as the Gunto, which means old military sword. And the new sort of traditional type became the Gunto, the new military sword. And that means that this military saber, this Western-style Japanese military saber, was in use in the 1870s right up until the early 1940s, which is actually a long time period. And in fact, Japan was at that time very expansionist and imperial, and was fighting with its neighbours such as China and Russia. So there was actually quite a lot of opportunity to use a sword like this in battle. And that is what it was designed for. This is not for show, it's not for ceremony, it technically be a symbol of rank, but as they were issued to cavalry and sergeants, they were designed as common soldiers' swords. And you might wonder, in the age of bolt-action rifles, revolvers, and ultimately machine guns, how much use is a sword? Well, not as much as it used to be, of course, but in confined spaces, in jungles, in urban fighting, and all sorts of close-quarters combat. I mean, the Japanese in that period loved bayonet fighting, and if you're going to be involved in a lot of bayonet fighting in the early 20th century, you're going to be involved in sword fighting as well. And so it's that really fascinating time period of Japan where they're in that kind of Western imperial kind of themed era, and they're actually involved in quite a lot of wars, and they're using Western type sabers. I think that's quite fascinating. And because this is the era of photography, we can see these in use in actual photographs of the time, which is just phenomenal, but also in traditional Japanese art. I think it's actually quite incongruous to see very much Western style uniforms and Western themed swords in this art, but it's also really fascinating. Now, as to how good these swords really were, we just don't know. It's hard to find exact original accounts of them in combat. But it's fair to say that it would have done the job perfectly well, and it wasn't replaced because it was a bad sword, it was replaced because of that harkening back to the old ways. And in fact, the Japanese move towards more traditional swords was not the end of this saber, because in fact it was copied by the Chinese and to this day is still in operation with certain mountain frontier type troops. So how do these Japanese sabers compare to their Western counterparts? Well, to compare them, I'd have to look at an equivalent. So this is the Otsu Sergeant's type variant, NCO variant. So let's compare it to something similar. A British sergeant, in this case a staff sergeant's sword of the mid-19th century. So it's roughly contemporary, and it's an issue sword for the same rank. And therefore it's a good equivalent to compare it to. So the Japanese sword is about 2 inches shorter. They weigh roughly the same. The guard is a little bit smaller on the Japanese sword, and the grip is a little bit shorter as well. Although ultimately they're not vastly different. And let's remember that the Japanese were quite a bit shorter in this time period than the average European. That gap has closed throughout the 20th century, but back then there was quite a difference. So in scale to their users, these would be roughly similar to a European equivalent. How do they otherwise compare? Well, it's got a very small amount of hand protection. The lack of distal taper means it handles a little bit more club-like. It's not as refined, although you will find that with certain sergeant swords. For example, the American M1840 feels a little bit like that as well. It's kind of, you know, a thick blade without much distal taper, so it handles in some regards in a similar fashion. So considering these Japanese sabers were designed and built at the end of the 19th century, they could benefit from all of the sword development, saber model development throughout history. So in theory, they could have made, you could say, the best based on all previous knowledge. Did they do that? Well, it's not as simple as that, is it, of course, because swords don't always get better over time. They evolve for their environment and their context. And so did they make the perfect or the best Western saber? No, they did not. But they made a functional, simple and strong sword that absolutely did the job. So it's not the most nimble, and yet it has good blade presence. It balances actually a lot more like most cavalry sabers than infantry, so it's got quite a bit of mass. That's no bad thing for a common soldier's fighting sword, where you might have to be trying to parry off muskets and bayonets or rifles and bayonets. So it's got blade presence, it's going to hit quite hard, which is, what you want out of a meaty soldier's sword. It doesn't have a huge amount of hand protection, although you wouldn't necessarily be expecting to be in many sword-on-sword fights with it. More likely to be facing something like a musket and bayonet. And as a cavalry weapon, of course, it's more kind of a weapon of opportunity where you might try and, charge some artillery pieces or run down some infantry or go into a skirmish force or something like that, where it could be quite successful. The grip is extremely comfortable, the backstrap is excellent, it has grip retention with this leather, and the scabbard locking mechanism is fantastic for a soldier's sword. So it's not the most refined thing in the world, it's very industrial, but it's strong, it's simple, it will parry everything nice and firmly, and it's going to hit hard. The tip is going to thrust perfectly well. So it's really hard to complain about this sword. It's just kind of it's a crude, common soldier's sword that does the job without being especially refined. So then, did they make the perfect katana saber hybrid? Well, ultimately, this is, of course, 99% saber. The fact that it looks like a katana in its blade profile doesn't really mean an awful lot. It grips, handles, and moves like a saber, and it's not traditionally made in its blade like a katana or tachi would be. So it very much more is just an actual saber with a Japanese flavor to it. Now, when we talk about, is this a hybrid of a saber and a katana, some people might say, well, the katana already is a saber, but that just isn't the case. So sabers, by definition, not just by the curvature of the blade in British English, are defined by this agility at the wrist. And if you look at a lot of the kind of moulinet actions, rotations at the wrist, you just can't do it with long-gripped swords. They can make the moves, but they don't do it well. So you could use this like a saber, but it would be a bad saber. Ultimately, these kind of swords, these katanas or small tachi, are designed as primarily a two-handed sword. A bit like the European hand-and-a-half sword is, yes, you can use it in one hand, but it's optimized for two-handed use. And that's why in some 19th century sources where Europeans encountered the Japanese, they'd call their katana two-handed cutlass. Now that's because the cutlass is short and the katana is very short. It's usually more a cutlass length than a saber length, and two-handed because they're defining it by its usage. So if you were to make something like this in Europe and make it two-handed, we wouldn't call it a saber, but you might call it a two-handed saber. By definition there, its use, its methodology is different. Now, the fascinating thing with these Gunto swords is the Japanese didn't just adopt Western sabers, they also changed their methodology of usage. So at the time in the Japanese army, there were still known methods of kanjutsu, and what they did with this sword coming in is they merged the kanjutsu methods with French saber, or Gunto jutsu. And there are several manuals published for the military, quite small kind of pamphlets basically, that were given out to common soldiers so they could learn how to use these swords. And if you'd like to see translated versions of this, you can check out this excellent book, which I'd recommend, and you can see those original manuals. But if we look at the plates from the manuals, you can see it's kind of fascinating as it looks very much like a hybrid between kendo or kenjutsu and European saber. So there is the Type 32 Gunto. I hope you enjoyed the video. I know people are enjoying seeing antiques again. I will delve more into many more subjects. Please do like and subscribe if you haven't already, and also note that we now have channel memberships. There's no pressure to join them, and we're not going to hide anything behind a paywall, but if you'd like to contribute and help out so that we can keep producing lots of interesting content, please do so. Thanks for watching.